right. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. Stay right, then turn right. Turn right. Stay right, and then exit right. Exit right. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Turn left. Stay right. Caution. Please mind the speed limit. 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 Caution. Please mind the speed limit.
That he didn't, because for 13 minutes he stood around to wait with the police officer, and the police officer showed restraint. Yeah, I think the job is hard enough to do without people trying to score points, and I think that's what's happening in this case.
Right, Tom, appreciate it, thank you. Christelle's in your corner in Croydon. Hi, Christelle.
Hi there, hi. I was actually at the march and I witnessed the incident with Gideon Walter, obviously walking past among the peaceful protesters and saw it from a distance. I didn't quite understand what was happening, so when I saw the footage back and put two and two together, it was just, I guess, another example of quite antagonistic incidents, I guess, I've seen.
Never mind.
Along on some
I'll
of these
find a new
marches.
route.
The police, I will honestly say, I'm not often the police's biggest cheerleader, but I have been on the whole really, really impressed with how they police the marches. On the whole, they've kind of let us get by
Caution.
peacefully.
Please mind the
Yes,
speed
even
limit.
people who are displaying the paragliding flags or shouting anti-Semitic slogans, they've seemed to get by quite happily too, some of them at least.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said, I have been to every march, and I guess it depends how you define what an anti-Semitic slogan is, but I haven't personally heard anything that I would consider anti-Semitic. I'd also like to stress that there's loads of Jewish people that come on the march, and they are normally, from what I've witnessed, also just received with warmth. I've never seen such a kind of mixed gathering at protests of people across race, faith, age, in the way that I have at these protests. So,
Let me read you this, Christelle.
yeah.
Let me read you this. It comes from Gary on 84850. Tom, it's so easy to blame the Jew, isn't it? From my perspective, you've slipped into casual anti-Semitism. Sort yourself out. Have you slipped into that too?
Me? No, you're not. We're all there because I think for 99.9% of us, we just don't want to see children being blown to bits anymore. We're there because we want to see an end to this. We're there for peace and for humanity. So it's quite offensive, actually, when our political leaders try to claim like that. I'm sure there are some negative elements somewhere, not that I've personally seen or witnessed, but that absolutely is a distraction from this. And as I say, the police... all hostages. Should be...
I heard yes for all hostages. Christelle, thank you very much indeed. Afshin's in Camden. Hi, Afshin.
Hi, yes. My problem with the police is they are not enforcing the law properly. I'm Iranian myself, and and what is happening in the march, I've seen a lot of placards from river to the sea. I've seen pro-Hamas placards, which are we know in this country it is Hamas is a terrorist organization, and to support it is illegal. And police doesn't enforce the law on those people. They don't have to make a scene at the rally to go and arrest them. They can just find out who they are and then go to their houses and charge these people not to do these things.
I think that has been one of the big criticisms of the way in which the police have done this. They haven't been quick enough to clamp down on that. There's been a bit of equivocation over some of the things that have been said or chanted or what have you. And I think that criticism is actually, to an extent, quite fair. I'm not sure this criticism is. I think the police also have to protect the peace. And if the assessment of the police officer was, I'm really sorry, my friend, but you being here is not good for you, it's not good for the people protesting, it's not good for me, then let's try and de-escalate the situation.
Yes, I understand, but that is, there was an Iranian guy called Niat who was being arrested several times for just holding a banner saying Hamas is a terrorist, which is a fact. And they arrested him several times for carrying that. And eventually the court had to interfere and, to release him.
Yeah, and I think that difficult, isn't it? Because if you're standing there with a placard that says Hamas are terrorists, which in this country is a legal fact, and you're arrested, is it the same argument the police are making to Mr. Falter? You can't stand here. That by the nature of you standing here, it is a provocation so much that you might be arrested. You're not moving on, so we're going to take you over and arrest you. 5:28 at the time. Let's get a business update. Chris Justin is here from Seven Investment Management. FTSE's had a stormer, Chris. How's that happened?
Absolutely right. It's down to 24. It closed out today. That's the highest close since February last year. Rose by 1.6% on 128 points. So, the driver of short-term sentiment confidence that the Middle East situation might avoid a major escalation. And also, the pound's at 5 months versus the dollar. So, less about over here, more about dollar strength in that case. As we know, fiat currencies anyway, are relative. So expectations of interest rate cuts, big kick down over the US, a bit supportive for the dollar.
Caution.
As I
Please mind the speaker.
make your sales abroad in dollars, you change those dollars, which have grown in strength, back into pounds, you get more of them, which then means a boost to your profits as a result. So, as over 80% of FTSE 100 constituents make revenue outside of the UK, which is why I always say try not to look at the UK economy and the FTSE 100 as linked, because they aren't really. And as the pound was down 0.25% today to 123.5 against the dollar, it's a nice result for company finance directors. Bit of a relief rally, as I mentioned as well, Tom.
Is sentiment now, market sentiment, that the interest rate cut will happen this year, even if it's delayed from what they previously thought?
In the US, yes, but if I'm honest, you'll continue to see that evolve as Jay Powell and other members of the FOMC open their mouths. But over in the UK, markets are fully pricing in 2 interest rate cuts, the initial one down from 5.25% to 5%. But as I mentioned, if you were to go back and listen to recordings of when you and I spoke in January, I'd have said something slightly different.
Yeah, quite.
So it all depends. It all depends on. But at the moment, 2 rate cuts in the UK, probably the European Union, European Central Bank are the ones that are at the moment looking like they'll be first out the gate, and then the Federal Reserve potentially later down the line. But as I mentioned last week, and at pains to mention, they're very, very cautious about what the impacts are if they go early and they aren't aligned as central banks.
Good to speak to you as always, Chris. Thank you very much indeed. Helpful background. Chris Justin from Seven Investment Management. You're listening to Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Coming up...
We want London to be London again. It's London in name only. At the moment, it's a divisive city.
We're just 10 days away from selecting the next person to be the Mayor of London. Ahead of our live London mayoral hustings tomorrow at 5, we'll speak now to the independent candidate, Natalie Campbell. By the way, to get your questions, lbc.co.uk/questions to get them in. 5:30, news headlines now to London.
MPs are debating the government's Rwanda bill, with the Prime Minister warning them and the Lords he'll make them stay all night to get it through. Rishi Sunak says he wants to see flights taking off in 10 to 12 weeks' time. A man who led a parliamentary group researching China has been charged with spying for the country. Christopher Cash and another man are accused of passing information to an enemy state after a counter-terror investigation lasting more than a year. The first criminal trial of a former sitting US president is underway. Donald Trump denies falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment to an adult film star just before the 2016 election. LBC weather, light rain continuing in central and eastern England tonight, dry elsewhere, cold in the north with a low of 1 degree.
LBC this morning on Nick Ferrari at breakfast. The Prime Minister said to be appalled by the Met Police treatment of a Jewish man who was threatened to be arrested at a pro-Palestinian rally. Sir John Windsor served as Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Constabulary.
As far as I've been able to see, the officer in question dealt with Mr. Falter with commendable courtesy and consideration.
The officer using the words, "You are obviously openly Jewish. No one should be addressed like that, should they?"
Perhaps he might have said, "It is plain that you are Jewish, and therefore if you get too close to these people, or indeed go into the crowd, wade into the crowd, there is going to be disorder, because you are going to be a target."
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
The world is facing a shortage of tradespeople. The metaverse can help solve that problem. With a virtual reality training platform developed by ForgeFX, aspiring welders can practice over and over. As a result, students learn the specialized skills they need to begin and advance welding careers. Meta and the metaverse are having impact today.
Global Player, the official LBC app, is also the home to podcasts like Ian Dale All Talk.
People will say you did the right thing.
With former Prime Minister Liz Truss.
Whatever mistakes I may have made, and I'm not saying I haven't made mistakes, I did not cause Britain's lack of economic growth. I tried to fix it. They're trying to smear me with economic results that I'm clearly not responsible for.
Ian Dale All Talk with Liz Truss. Listen on Global Player, the official LBC app. Download it now for free.
If losing missing teeth or dentures affect the foods you can eat and make you feel embarrassed about your smile, speak to us at TDC about how we restore full sets of teeth so you can get your smile and your confidence back. To learn more and book your consultation, visit smileinaday.co.uk. We're now part of Bupa.
Join the nation in Cinching. Buy your perfect car online and get first-class assistance from start to finish. Your new car, madam, with friendly customer service available 7 days a week.
Hello, this is Cinch. How can I help you?
An expert walkthrough of your new car when it's delivered. And a VAT-free 14-day money-back guarantee. Hardly surprising, Cinch is rated excellent on Trustpilot. So join the nation. Absolutely cinching it. Search Cinch and buy your next car today. Return subject to mileage restrictions, T's and C's apply.
School reunion. What am I doing? Getting these people together after all these years. The last time we shared there was leg warmers and rah-rah skirts involved.
We can't help the uncertainty around getting old friends together. But when it comes to bringing your old pensions together, we can help. Transfer all your old pensions into one place. To combine, go to standardlife.co.uk. Transferring pensions won't be right for everyone. Money invested is at risk. Provided by Phoenix Life Limited, trading as Standard Life. For full details, visit standardlife.co.uk.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC with Tom Swarbrick.
5:34 is the time. Tom Swarbrick here on LBC. We are, as you know, just 10 days away now from the biggest democratic moment in this country, probably until the general election, including selecting the next person to be the Mayor of London. Tomorrow at 5 we're hosting the 4 front-runners in this race, the Lib Dems,
Stay right,
the Greens, Zoe Garbutt,
and then turn
Conservative
right.
candidate Susan Hall, and the incumbent Labour's Sadiq Khan will all be here live at 5
Turn
tomorrow.
right.
Joining me live now is an independent candidate, Natalie Campbell, who is also the co-CEO of the drinks company Bellew Water. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. It's good to see you. You say that London needs to be run with a CEO's approach.
Yes.
What would that mean in practice?
Look, we're in the situation that we're in because we've got politicians that are looking to their party for the answers. As soon as you take a CEO's approach, you look at London and who you're here to serve, which is the people. It's Londoners. We start to think about a budget in a completely different way. We think about London as a connected system. At the moment, we've got a number of silo strategies that don't necessarily work.
And then turn right.
Actually involve people in the design of those strategies and processes because it's about the politics.
Turn right.
Do you think, though, that ignores the necessary politics involved in running a city like that?
But what is the necessary politics?
Well, you have to work with a government. You have to work with a government that is of a political colour, and there will be politics.
But if you are partyless, the dynamic is completely different. If I am Labour and the government of the day is Conservative,
Stay right.
You can see the inherent tension,
and then turn
and
right.
vice versa. As soon as I have no party to please, then the reality is you do the right thing for London, and that's why I'm saying it's important to have an independent in the mix and an independent as the Mayor of London, because we're in this position because we continually go round in this I can't deliver because they won't let me.
What are your examples of that, or what do you think are the biggest examples of that politics getting in the way of delivery?
Hammersmith Bridge, totally political. That should have been funded back when it was actually cheap. I personally wouldn't reopen it, but it's an example of multiple people of the same party literally just saying, I don't want to do it. And you've got those examples time and time again. If you have a CEO running things, the CEO has to cut through. You have to deliver, or you're out. And the difference is if people vote for me and I don't deliver, I'm out. I don't have the party system to keep funding me to sit in the same seat year in, year out.
You talk too about resetting relations with the police in London. Yeah. Do you think that Mark Rowley is the man to do that job?
I don't think Sadiq Khan is the man to do that job. Ultimately, he's the boss. He is the big boss. He keeps saying, he holds his hands up and says, it's not me. You have the title. You are head commissioner. So I say the leadership starts with him. Then you have to look at the team around him. Right now, do I think he's doing an amazing job of resetting them? No, he's not.
How effective is that police and crime commissioner role as being Mayor of London? Because you can't tell the police what to do operationally, understandably, widely. Yeah. But you can always say that they're not quite doing it. How effective is that? As a CEO, would you want to keep that role?
Stay left.
Yes. So I think, again, when we remove the politics and think about what we're trying to do, policing at the moment is trying to put a sticking plaster on crime. It's trying to put a sticking plaster on the broken trust. It's trying to put a sticking plaster on the reputation of the Met. As soon as we take a step back and say, police are here to serve and to protect, you set the force up in a completely different way. And you look at how we lead the force with more empathy, how we lead the force with accountability. Mm-hmm. I think if the Mayor said, I'm going to hold my hands up and say I haven't done a great job, people would start to respond in a very different way and take the heat off Mark. It's all on him when the reality is it's a team effort.
Do you think the Met Police is institutionally racist?
Yes, I'm black. Yeah. I mean, since the Macpherson report came out in 1999, this isn't new to black people. We've been saying it for a very long time. I think people are now catching up because they're seeing it's not just racist post-Casey. There's an issue with ableism. There's an issue with misogyny. There's an issue with the culture. I'm not saying that there aren't people in there that want to do an amazing job, but we need to find them and support them to do that job.
Could you work with the head of the Met who doesn't like using that term, doesn't think that term is appropriate?
No.
So you'd have to get rid of it?
Yes.
And you would?
Yes.
You say that London doesn't feel like London.
No.
What do you mean by that?
For everyone, that's different, right? We all know it. There's a time, if you close your eyes and say, when did London feel good? I'm sure most people are smiling right now. It doesn't feel like that.
2012 Olympics.
2012 Olympics. So my campaign is teamcampbell.london to evoke that spirit of the Olympics. There's always a thing and a moment people can connect to, whether or not that's the night out that they had, or when it was more affordable, or when it was clean, or when cars could move from A to B. We all know what it looks like, and we're not there anymore. I think that is partly the constraints that the mayor has put on the city over the last 8 years.
I think you changed the speed limit, wouldn't you? You
on
put it back
TfL
up to
roads.
30.
Yes,
Right.
so TfL road. So the Euston Road Park Lane at 20 miles per hour is a stealth tax. I've spoken to loads of cabbies who've said, look, if I get 6 points on my licence, I've lost my job. I'm getting penalty charge notices and because this road is ultimately 20 miles per hour. There is no threat to life on Park Lane or Euston Road. It should be 30 miles per hour at a minimum.
And that would create that feeling of... So what does London feel like now, if not like London?
London, it feels hard. The point that I'm trying to make is, when London feels like London, it should feel like a fun, dynamic, buzzing city with loads going on, where even if, you can't always afford to do the most amazing things, you can do some stuff that makes you feel good. But if you have cabbies that hate driving around the city, you've got graduates that can't get jobs, you've got businesses that don't know if they can open day to day, you've got bike tipping and fly tipping left, right and centre, there's distrust between the Met Police. I mean, if I could change the weather, I absolutely would, but that's something I definitely can't do. All of these things create this pot of London almost being at a high level of anxiety when it doesn't need to.
But isn't that partly down to cost of living pressures that the mayor of London, whoever they may be, has absolutely no power to control, really?
Yes, I do not disagree with you on that point. It is part of a national picture, but there are small levers that the mayor has to help everybody out. And so cabbies fearing that they're not going to be able to do their job is not helping people out. Businesses not being able to open to trade past a certain hour is not helping people out.
You can't get a meal in London past 10:30.
You can't. I was in Paris and, we were out eating at 1 o'clock. There was no antisocial behaviour. It was absolutely it was glorious. It really was. And I was sort of shocked. There are so many parts of London that, if we went back to some of the elements of later licensing and affordability around housing, the dynamic would be completely different. We don't have neighbourhoods anymore. I grew up in Willesden. It was very much a neighbourhood dynamic. We've got massive high-rise developments that have lost any sense of community. And so I talk about building more homes, but I also talk about creating happy neighbourhoods, because that's the core of what makes London feel like London.
What is your politics? Who have you voted for previously?
All of the parties. So Women's Equality Party, Green Party, Conservative and Labour. I'm a centrist, but I'm pragmatic. I'm an entrepreneur. I am absolutely pro-business, but I'm a social entrepreneur. So we give 100% of our net profits away. I believe in money, but I don't believe in greed. You can find a line where it is about making London successful, where everyone is doing well.
You say you will have zero BS. People, you say that you're not a politician. You're not backed by that old politics, as it were.
Yeah.
But everyone looks at people who run for offices like this and think, oh well, they're going to have to do BS at some point because they're in the world of politics. Is having a nighttime czar on 120 grand a year BS?
Yes.
So that would go too.
Yes. Absolutely. So the mayor has 10 deputy mayors all paid over 100k a year, and we've got a whole load of czars that haven't actually made anything in London better. So they would go. You'd do it in a business. If people aren't performing, you'd get rid of them. So that's a zero BS approach. But it's also talking about the trade-offs. So I wouldn't reopen Hammersmith Bridge, which a lot of cabbies will be like, oh, why are you not doing that? But I will put TfL roads back to 30 miles per hour. Again, it's the trade-offs and being honest about that. I absolutely disagree with the point that you have to sort of fall into line around being a politician. I can absolutely run London as a CEO and be pragmatic and share, here are the trade-offs, here's the budget, this is the impact. If I don't do what I say I'm going to do, vote me out.
And you don't think politicians can do that? Or people backed by... Why not?
Politicians are always thinking about their next job.
So CEOs?
But potentially in a completely different company. In politics, they're thinking about their next job within the party. So Boris set the standard of the mayor becoming the PM. So the current mayor is probably thinking, what is my next gig? Secretary of State? Could I lead the party? So you make decisions based on who you need to please on that pathway.
He's, the record is 3 terms, and he's running for a 3rd term, which would be a record. But CEOs also are have to respond to whatever the bottom line is, and shareholders and everything like that. So they are answerable to people.
Yes, but in this gig, I'd be answerable to the voters. I'm self-funding. I don't have financial backers behind me saying, once you get in, you now need to let me develop here, here and here. It's my own money. Well, the bank's money at a rate of 7.9% APR. So for me, it's a very different way of thinking about London.
And the campaign is, the website is?
teamcampbell.london.
Natalie Campbell, independent candidate for Mayor of London. Thank you very much indeed for coming in the studio. You can get your questions in for the hustings tomorrow, by the way, lbc.co.uk/questions. You can also go on the LBC website for a full list of candidates as well. Tom Swarbrick here. Coming up,
we're going to deliver this indispensable deterrent so that we finally break the business model of the criminal gangs and save lives.
Rishi Sunak sets a new deadline for getting flights to Rwanda off the ground as he slams the House of Lords for holding up the law change. We'll speak to Labour's Lords leader next. 5:45, news headlines, Tim Humphrey.
MPs have started what could be an all-night sitting on the Rwanda bill to debate the latest Lords amendments. The jury in the Donald Trump hush money trial is hearing opening arguments. 2 men, including a former parliamentary aide, have been charged with spying for Russia. LBC weather, light rain continuing in central and eastern England tonight, dry elsewhere, cold in the north with a low of 1 degree.
LBC travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are delays on the A40 coming into town. It's partly blocked because of an accident after Hillingdon Circus. It's slow in Edmonton. 4th Street is closed in both directions because of an accident between Levener Road and Church Street. In Holloway, Hornsey Road is closed in both directions at Arthur Road. That's because of an accident. There are delays. It's heavy on the A12 coming into town after a car broke down earlier, just after the Red Bridge roundabout. On the Tube, there are severe delays on the Piccadilly line eastbound between Uxbridge and Acton Town after there was a fire alert earlier. On the trains, London Overground have severe delays between Gospel and Upper Holloway, and Thameslink have delays of up to 15 minutes between Blackfriars and St Pancras because of problems with the signals.
Coming up at 6 on LBC tonight with Andrew Marr.
The promise of a very late night at Westminster as the Rwanda bill is finally pushed through. But will it work in stopping the boats, helping the Tories, or in any way at all?
Tonight with Andrew Marr on LBC.
Are you the parent of a media-loving Year 9 going into Year 10 this September? Consider Global Academy, a school but different. They'll study GCSEs in addition to a fully creative curriculum. They'll future-proof their skills and stay at the forefront of the digital revolution. And they'll open doors through partnerships with some of the biggest employers in media. Global Academy, the place to kickstart a media career. Apply now for Year 10 at globalacademy.com.
Call Tom Swarbrick 0345 6060 973 LBC.
Have you tried the improved McDonald's burgers? It's just a little bit more.
Caution. Please mind the speed limit.
Classics. Now a little more. Comparison with prior classic burgers. Served after 11 a.m. subject to availability.
For Club Lloyd customers, home isn't just where the heart is, it's also where the
Caution.
2%
Please mind
discount
the speed
is.
limit.
If you take out a mortgage as a Lloyds Bank Club Lloyds customer, that's exactly what you could get. A 0.2% discount off your initial mortgage rate. With something for everyone, Club Lloyds is the inclusive bank account with exclusive benefits. Search Club Lloyds. £3 monthly fee may apply. Exclusions and conditions apply. Account opening subject to status. UK residents 18+.
You could be our next Win Plus winner. Enter now to win big cash prizes and loads more at winplus.co.uk. 18+, GB only, T's and C's apply.
At Big Motoring World, we love giving you a huge choice of low-price cars. But we're bigger than that. Because we're big on all the things that matter to you. Like the little details that'll make your car buying experience a lot more, from fully refundable online deposits to a free milkshake while you browse. See bigmotoringworld.co.uk. We're big on what matters to you.
Mark Granny visits Spencer
Stay right.
To find out if you
Then exit right.
visit our website.
Play Set for Life, and you could.
Exit right.
£10,000 every month for 30 years. Set for Life. Play now on the National Lottery app. Terms, rules, and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
10:06 the time. Come back to the Stramash over Rwanda in the Commons this hour in just a moment. First, Stuart's in a meeting about the police. Stuart. Hello. You're not happy with how they're treating this man, is that right?
No, that's true. I think
Caution. Please mind the speed limit.
I've been on protest before now, where the police were goaded and even provoking the crowd to react so that they could
Caution. Please mind the speed limit.
I've seen people pushing people and all sorts of things, and so the way that they treat people is disrespectful, and the Corvallis thing.
Caution. Please mind the speed limit.
It was saying something when I was sitting there and just listening because his point of view was wrong.
What was anti-Semitic about what they did? What was anti-Semitic about how the police handled it?
It's basically saying you are a particular religion, Jewish or Christian or whatever. I don't like your attitude. I don't like you.
Well, the two things can be true at the same time. One doesn't have to lead to the other. It's not because he's Jewish that it might be a problem for his safety, is it?
No, but the police are there to keep the peace, like you have said earlier. They should also keep their own personal views out of this situation.
No obligation to get a personal view of the man who's anti-Semitic, I don't think, Stuart. Thank you very much indeed for the call. Let's get back to the debate that is happening in the House of Commons, the Rwanda bill, which Rishi Sunak spoke about earlier today. Is making its way very slowly between the House of Commons and the House of Lords in what is known as ping-pong. Rishi Sunak says it is Labour peers who have helped to slow this emergency legislation down. Baroness Angela Smith, the shadow leader of the House of Lords under Labour peer. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme, Baroness Smith. It's your fault.
I know, I heard that, and if he wasn't so serious, I might have laughed at him. I don't think Rishi Sunak realises that, well, there's two things. One, that in Parliament, governments don't get it right first time every time, and what the House of Lords is to look at the detail and suggest amendments to the House of Commons. But from that, when we get into ping-pong between both houses, it's the government that sets the timetable of when we debate it and vote it. Now, we would have expected the government to have done more of this before Easter, so I must have really said today you'll be here over the night to get it done. Prime Ministers do say that, I've said it in the past. They normally say on the second round of ping-pong must be the third. He's doing it on the third and the fourth. It's his government that spent, 25 years I've been in Parliament, and I have never known a government take so long to do ping-pong. There's some really sensible amendments that have been suggested by the House of Lords. I'm disappointed they haven't accepted, particularly the one.
Caution. Please mind the speed limit.
I can understand where you are. The government says that it already, on the Afghan bill, the government says it already has a scheme for those from Afghanistan who served in the military to bring them across. It's called ARAP, and there's no need to have this piece of legislation, or that amendment made to this piece of legislation to do that.
Yes, it's said that, but those that make their way here that haven't got permission to leave the country, and we know it's very difficult to do so to Rwanda, however they've come here, we're talking about less than a dozen people that worked with our armed forces, that have helped protect them, and I wonder what message it says to our allies when we say we're not protecting those people. So someone says that, but I think we might keep the movement on that. Let's wait and see if the government is prepared to move on this one, because it is grossly unfair what they are suggesting now.
Would you ultimately, ideally, like to see the bill struck down, even if it's done so in the House of Lords? They just don't let it through.
It's not the role of the House of Lords to get rid of bills. That's not how we operate. All we can do is actually suggest sensible amendments and we had 7 to start with. None of them would have corrected the bill. They would have all made the kind of improvements that I think a sensible government could have accepted. And we're down to the 2 now, and we'll see where they go. One of them is just to give powers to ministers to say, we'll look at the evidence to see if Rwanda continues to be safe in the future. That isn't really something that affects the bill. I think that Rishi Sunak got a little overexcited this morning. The other point is, of course, John, when he talks about the Labour Party, yes, we oppose this terrible piece of legislation. It's the 3rd bill we've had that says it's going to do this, and the other 2 failed as well. But there are 100 more Tory peers than Labour. If they could convince their own people that this bill was the right way forward, they would have turned up to vote.
Good to talk to you. Baroness Angela Smith, Shadow Leader of the House of Commons and Labour peer, that legislation being debated in the House of Commons as we speak tonight. 5 to 6. Troy's in Stamford Hill. Hi, Troy.
How you doing, you alright?
Oh, well, sir. You want to talk about this policing incident, the lack of trust that there is in the police?
Tom, listen, this whole situation was a publicity stunt by the chief executive of the campaign against anti-Semitism. Hear me out. If you look at this, if you look at the charity social media from the beginning of the conflict, you will see that Gideon Falter has been trying very hard to try to get the protest curtailed and curbed. We're talking about October. These words the Metropolitan Police is back in
There's nothing inherently wrong with that. That's
yeah, that's fine. Exactly. So these words people right to do that. However, the prime time to drop it, using campaigning, lobbying the police, getting lawyers, home secretaries to try to get the protest curtailed. It's all failed. So as a result, he's gone to the protest intentionally to promote this.
Caution. Please mind the speed limit.
You can see that the police are trying to fulfill their legal duty to maintain peace.
Well, Troy,
caution. Please mind the speed limit.
Why did the Met apologise?
Get ready to turn left.
Well, the Met apologised because probably the language that was used was quite clumsy and probably wasn't really appropriate to use at the time. However, I mean, I'm not defending what was said. What was said was wrong to the campaigner himself. However,
turn left.
If you look at the video, you can see that Mr. Ford was being very belligerent and was making it very difficult for the officer to
That's difficult, but you don't get arrested for just being belligerent. And I think you're right. It's interesting that you make the distinguish between the language used that was wrong, but the actual actions that the officer was saying he was going to take were right. Troy, thank you. Paul's in Torquay. Hi, Paul.
Hi, hello there.
You want to pick up on this notion of the college being anti-Semitic?
The issue I have is the word openly.
Yeah.
And if you apply that to a Christian walking around with a cross showing through their top or around the necklace or whatever, and someone says, "Oh, you're openly Christian," is that offensive? If someone walks around with a rainbow badge on their T-shirt or whatever, and someone says, "Is that openly LGBT?"
But the difference is it doesn't distinguish, in this case, very specifically, doesn't distinguish between being Jewish and being Israeli. There are Jewish people who go on those marches in support of the pro-Palestinian cause, and there are Israelis who aren't Jewish who might be on the other side.
But you're inferring the policeman was making that distinction. He just said,
yes,
you were openly Jewish. He didn't say you're openly Israeli or anything else.
That's why it's a problem.
So, it isn't a problem. The problem is how the media has now taken that as an offensive remark and said and completely obfuscating the context of the whole conversation.
No, I think the context of the difference between being Jewish and being Israeli is really important, actually, in this. But again, being openly Jewish, I mean, he was wearing an outward symbol of his faith, so, I mean, yes, probably factually correct. But in that context, clumsy. Well, thank you for the call. Thanks for all your calls today. Back tomorrow at 4. Don't forget, we've got the mayoral hustings live at 5 tomorrow as well. If you missed any of the show, get the Global Player app, the official LBC app, and can pause and rewind live radio. At 7 tonight, Ian Dale. Next, Andrew Marr.
Thanks, Tom. Parliament, both peers and MPs, is going to be sitting long into the night, it seems, as Rishi Sunak rams through the final stages of his controversial Rwanda bill. But will it work in stopping the boats? Is it value for money? Will it work politically in reviving Tory fortunes? And what about the Afghan veterans who fought alongside British soldiers but are now caught by it? So many questions. I'll try to give you plenty of answers. All of that, plus Chinese spies at Westminster, flocks of Swifties alighting at a South London pub, the impact of Joe Biden's new aid for Ukraine, profound troubles for the SNP in Scotland, and a dramatic jacking up of bills by Thames Water. A lively hour ahead. Join me after the news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Caution. Please mind your speed limit.
At 6 o'clock, MPs and peers are being told to prepare for an all-night sitting if necessary as Rishi Sunak tries to drive his Rwanda bill through Parliament. The legal says it's fines carrying asylum seekers taking off in 10 to 12 weeks. He's blamed Labour peers for the delays, but Baroness Angela Smith, who's shadow leader of the House of Lords, told LBC that they're doing their job.
Governments don't get it right first time every time. The role of the House of Lords is to look at the detail and suggest amendments to the House of Commons. But from that, when we get into between both houses, it's the government that sets the timetable of when we debate it or when we vote it on things.
MPs have rejected one of the Lords' amendments. Two men have been charged with spying for China. One of them was a parliamentary researcher at the time, and some Conservative forums warn MPs not to speculate about the case. Donald Trump's historic trial has started in the US. The former president denies covering up hush money he paid to a former adult film star in 2016. He says it's a sad, sad day for America. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 128 points, 80.24. That's a new record high, mainly driven by rises in the shares of major retailers. The power buy is $1.23 and €1.16.
LBC Weather.
With Ripple Energy, climate action you can be proud of.
Light rain continuing in central and eastern England tonight. Dry elsewhere. It's getting colder than normal with a low of 1 degree. From Global News for LBC, I'm Tim Humphrey.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. It's 6 p.m. Now, tonight with Andrew Marr.
Good evening, everyone. Whatever you are doing later on, a little weeding in the dusk, perhaps, or a last dog walk, perhaps a final malt whiskey in front of some eminently forgettable tilly, or an early night tucked up with a trollop, then you can be pretty sure that your legislators, MPs and peers alike, will still be hard at work. The exhausting Rwanda bill, which simply declares that African countries to be safe and allows asylum seekers who wanted to live in Britain to be forcibly flown there instead, is going to be pushed through all of its final stages tonight. In Rishi Sunak's words, however long it takes. No ifs, no buts. It's all in pursuit of his promise to stop the boats, which are, by the way, coming across in greater numbers than ever at the moment. But when he spoke this morning, there was no mistaking his personal commitment to this idea.
When I got this job, there seemed to be this general sense that no one could do anything about this. But this is just something we had to live with. It was just a fact of modern life. The numbers had gone up every year, doubled, quadrupled over the past few years before I got this job. And I didn't think that was right, because this is fundamentally wrong. It's fundamentally unfair that people jump the queue, undermine our sense of fairness, and come here illegally, put pressure on services, and, by the way, risk their lives and are exploited by criminal gangs in the process. None of that is right.
Now, although the Rwanda plan wasn't in the Tories' last manifesto, which promised instead to continue to grant asylum and support to refugees fleeing persecution, the Lords are the unelected House, and most people would think the Commons, and therefore number 10, has the right to get this measure through if they insist. But what happens next? Further legal challenges for sure. According to the Prime Minister, we aren't likely to see aircraft taking off until late June or early July. And then, whatever the morality, there is the scale of this project. Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, says the scheme is costing more than £500 million to send just 300 people, less than 1% of asylum seekers here, with no plan at all for the other 99%. And even some of the ministers most prominent in promoting this idea today, such as the Deputy Foreign Secretary Andrew Mitchell, have radically changed their minds, it seems, because a couple of years ago he was saying this scheme was far too expensive and it would be cheaper to put refugees up in the Ritz Hotel or send them, if they were under 18, to Eton. Now he says those opposed to the scheme are fueled by borderline racism. Deep and shark-infested waters indeed. Let me know your thoughts. Would getting this policy through have an impact on how you plan to vote in the election? Or is it a waste of time and of money? Text me on 84850 or email mark@lbc.co.uk. It has been a really busy day and it's going to be a long, busy night. In a moment we'll hear from Helena Kennedy, Baroness Kennedy, the Labour lawyer who has been a consistent and forthright opponent of this measure. But first, let's talk to LBC's political editor, Natasha Clark, who was at Rishi Sunak's press conference a bit earlier and has been following this story all day, and I imagine Natasha all night as well.
Yes, it might be a long evening for me, Andrew. I'm hearing from the government now that they do expect, it's just gone through the House of Commons, they've stripped off those two Lords amendments, and now we're expecting it to go back to the Lords within the next hour. But the government are expecting that Piers, and perhaps you can shed some light on exactly what those will be in a few moments' time, but we are expecting them to put more on that stance. We're expecting this ping pong to continue. The Prime Minister, I'm told, is having a drinks reception for Tory MPs as they wait for the results of these votes to come.
And they have mixed views on this. I'm going to come back to you again in a second, but I'm gathered that Danny Kruger, the leader of the New Conservatives from the Commons at the moment, and has just a couple of moments for us. Danny, I hope you can hear me. You are opposed to this bill originally. You said it didn't go far enough, and you don't think that as drafted it will actually work.
Hello, Andrew. Let's hope it does. I support the principle of the bill. Take all the criticisms I've just heard you repeat. It is really expensive, and if we only get a few hundred people up to Rwanda and that doesn't deter the votes, then the policy would have failed. And that was my anxiety.
Please mind
but I really hope it works. It's right that we've pushed back against the Lord's amendments this evening, and I'm hopeful the bill will pass at some point tonight, and then we'll have to see. And fundamentally, in order to get a humane, fair refugee system that everybody agrees we need, we have to stop people entering illegally and jumping the queue. And the only way to do that is to deter them. If you can't stop them physically in the channel, police will understand that we have to remove them once they arrive. So that's the plan, and it'll be, I hope, an effective policy, but we'll need some months before we can be sure of that.
Well, Danny, as you know, lots of people have different views on this. Can you explain one thing to me? I find it very, very hard to justify the idea that Afghan veterans who fought alongside the SAS took huge risks in Afghanistan and who in some cases have lost their entire families as a result, but nonetheless managed to get here, should be part of the group sent to Rwanda. I find that very, very hard to justify.
So do I, and that isn't what would happen. It would be completely wrong if that happened. And the government has made a commitment that it won't be sending any Afghan translators or people who helped our forces. What we don't need, though, is a clause in the bill that allows people to use that opportunity to say, I was an Afghan interpreter, and hold up their removal for months. We know who the interpreters and helpers were. We're able to identify them. There are routes to support those people to leave Afghanistan anyway. There are issues with that, I recognise. We need to do more to improve them. But this is not another way. I'm afraid to say, every single person who arrives to buy a small boat uses whatever loopholes are available. And we're not here, we should not be creating more loopholes that will clog up the system. We should not be deporting translators, and we won't be.
Oh, good. Well, so on this, at any rate, you're supporting the government. Have you got your sleeping bag? Are you prepared for a very, very late night indeed?
Well, you just asked me how long she wants to keep this going. Ultimately, I'm sure the Lords will recognise that the Commons will prevail. And it's just a question of how long they want to just maintain the sort of performance of resistance. Whilst in the end, we're here to vote. I'm not going to complain about that. If the Lords want to keep it going, and let them be. That's what we want to do at the moment.
All right, Danny, thank you very much indeed. Well, it's very rare that I can talk to Helena Kennedy about Danny Kruger's sleeping arrangements, but we'll come back in just a second, Helena. Just before we do, I'd like to ask Natasha a little more about what we know about the future of this scheme. The Prime Minister, I gather from the press conference you were at, kind of accepts there will be legal challenges, and it's still quite a long time to go before those flights will take off, and that is partly about the airlines which will agree to do this.
Yes, so the Prime Minister said earlier today that he expects it to be 10 to 12 weeks before the very first plane is taken off to Rwanda. They expect that to include the time for legal challenges and for them to pick the people on the flights to essentially to let them have their chance to appeal if they do, and to go through all the checks and balances that they need, which is obviously quite a long time, and even longer than the Prime Minister admitted that he wanted to. So that spring deadline that he previously set for himself, he's now admitted that that's gone out the window. He blamed the Lords for this, saying that this was not his fault and that it was the Lords.
He blamed the Labour peers in particular, and yet an awful lot of Conservative peers, as we'll hear later on, who also object to this.
There are. But what was really interesting, Andrew, is there was a document that was left under a chair at the Downing Street press conference earlier, which said something very different. It said actually that the government do expect the first chartered plane to come off in June. Now that's a lot sooner, isn't it? It's obviously a difference that the government, between a chartered plane, which the government may have to order them to take that plane themselves, and a commercial plane. The government said earlier today they do have a commercial airline which is ready to fly those planes, but it perhaps is the case that they are not quite ready to go with that.
Finally, there is clearly quite a large group of people who will arrive here and because of the new legislation have been deemed to be illegals, as it were, but far more than can go to Rwanda. So there'll be an awful lot of people in this country in limbo, in perpetual limbo, with no clear exit route about where they go next or what they can do next, whether they can work or not. So that's going to be a big problem for the government going forward too.
Yes, and Rishi Sunak said today that he has expanded the detention capacity to around 2,200 places, with far more than 2,200 migrants that have arrived here on small boats in the last 12 months at all.
I think 5,000 in the last few weeks.
Yes, and the numbers are today looking pretty poor for Rishi Sunak. He has said that they went down last year, but actually if we look at the numbers from January to April this year, they have gone up. So yes, it is going to prove a real problem, I think, with detention for the Prime Minister and getting these people off. But they haven't operationalised that part of the illegal migration bill yet. So nobody who has actually come yet from Rwanda will actually be being sent there as part of those plans. Yeah.
Natasha, thank you very much. You've got a long evening ahead. Helena, Baroness Kennedy, has it been worth it? You have fought this ferociously now, week in, week out. And at the end, as you know, the Lords is bound constitutionally to lose this argument, or lose the numbers at any rate. So has it been worth it?
Well, you're saying that. It's kind of interesting. When a manifesto has things in it, then the Lords almost invariably will retreat because they feel that this was presented to the public, the Commons knew what they were going to be getting, and therefore the Lords are not entitled to do it. What the Lords feel largely is that when it comes to something that really is of a constitutional nature, or it's something that involves our treaty obligations under international law, or it involves the rule of law, our own law in the UK, and you've got to remember that the Supreme Court's decision that Rwanda was unsafe was based on all of those different things. It was based on, the common law, as well as on, it didn't refer at all very much to the Human Rights Act or anything. It was really talking about the idea that somehow this country did not have a legal system that was capable yet of actually determining whether somebody might be at risk of refoulement, and that's been sent back to a place where they could be tortured. And so the safety issue was resolved by the court. Now we'll be asked to vote on something to say that a place that is still unsafe is to vote for it to say that it is safe, but it isn't. So we're voting for a lie. And that's what sticks in the craw of many of the crossbenchers and the real opposition here.
So how long do you keep going? My instinct is that you're going to be what they used to call in Lloyd George's time a ditcher, a last ditcher. You'll keep fighting all the way.
I'm afraid that is true. And one of the things that you've got to remember, and people don't seem to know this, is that the House of Lords has a Conservative majority, a serious Conservative majority. And Labour...
Not an overall majority. They're the biggest party.
But in numbers terms, it's got the biggest bench. And they're all whipped in today, I can assure you. But the way that votes in the House of Lords get a majority is by a combination of other benches, the Liberal Democrats and the crossbenchers. And the crossbenchers are people who are not party political, they're independent, and they come to these things from a different sort of perspective. And so what's interesting is that usually it's the crossbenchers who say to Labour and the Lib Dems, we can't support you anymore because we've not been elected and we're not political and we're not going to do that. But this time, the real beef is coming from the crossbenchers.
So is your instinct then that the Lords will put back in the amendments and send them back yet again to the Commons?
They will go back again tonight. I would lay a pound to a penny that you will find that there will be an agreement to send back the two areas, the two issues. One which is let us have a proper
Please
they
mind the
say,
speed limit.
which at the moment it isn't still, and we want to see that guaranteed before. Now that's Lord Hope's proposal.
And I just heard Danny Kruger just now saying something that I hadn't realised, which is that the government has now given a commitment that Afghan veterans will not be sent to Rwanda.
Well,
is that a victory?
Well, I mean, what they're saying is that when it comes to the business of deporting, they're going to have to. They can only get 300 there, so there'll be others that they can send ahead of anybody who comes into that category. But they're not making the concession which the amendment was calling for, and there are other people who are going to suffer seriously by this whole business. It's £1.8 million per asylum seeker. And the other thing is, we've paid.
Sandra Mitchell's point about sending them to the Ritz instead.
Yeah, and he was absolutely right then, and he's turned turtle on it because they're all being whipped in, and they want to get them up in the air before an election, and that's why there's such a busyness about this, and they were having troubles finding a commercial airline. And
I was going to ask you about the airlines, Helena, because they presumably have a certain amount of jeopardy if they agree to do it.
They have serious jeopardy because
So what is the legal situation they face?
It's their insurance. I mean, we'll be unhappy about the business of cost if they end up, if people start sort of go to the lavatory and then don't come out of it and are threatening suicide, or if there are people on the plane who seem to be having a nervous breakdown or anything of that sort, they'll not be able to take to the air. And so the insurers are going to be very anxious about underwriting this stuff, and so most of the major airlines are not going to be interested. And so they'll go to some charter company that, we won't name the potential contenders, that the folk that wear your wash bag and weigh everything and charge you for all of it. And so there's a null cost. But the other thing is that one of the committees in the House of Lords went out to Rwanda, and it was a joint committee on human rights, and we saw that we're even having to now build flats for the people to go into. We might get asylum in Rwanda. We're actually building homes for them, but we're not building homes for young couples in this country.
Because you were there, I think, training lawyers at one point in Rwanda, or training judges or something, and I wonder, therefore, you've had direct experience whether you consider it to be a safe country.
Well, one of the problems is that this is a country that went through huge trauma 30 years ago. There have been serious problems about dealing with the issues of asylum, and they've got many asylum people who have fled from the Congo, where there's terrible persecution, and have gone there, and they're all in tents, in sort of tent cities on the edges of
Please mind the speed limit.
And so we've got to be clear that the legal system has not been equipped to deal with this situation of people coming from further afield.
Lady Kennedy, thank you very much indeed for coming in and talking about policy tonight. It's been fascinating. Coming up, we're going to speak to a peer who backed the amendment protecting Afghan nationals who assisted British forces, and that has just been defeated by MPs, as you heard. But how much of this does all really matter to you, the voters who are listening to tonight's demand? Time now, 6:18.
This is LBC.
Orbital cosmic Tom Pattern.
Ocular credence chronology.
Operatic consonants from
I've got it.
Ocular comments of photomorphy.
I haven't got it. What is it anyway?
Optical coherence tomography, an advanced eye health scan that can help spot sight conditions early. At Specsavers, we think it's so important, we're providing it nationwide.
Octopus coherence. I've got the giggles now.
Not everyone can say it, but everyone can have it. Add it to your eye test for an additional charge. Check your local store for availability and price.
Here's an offer from Volkswagen we think you'll approve of. Get 5.9% APR representative on an all-electric approved used Volkswagen ID4 or ID5 up to 36 months old on Solutions PCP, and 2 years servicing. Your Volkswagen approved used retailer will also include 2 years warranty and 2 years roadside assistance as standard. An all-electric ID4 or ID5 to drive away today. What's not to approve of? Don't miss out. Offer ends April 30th. Search Volkswagen approved used ID.
Indemnities may be required, but participating retailers, vehicles up to 100,000 miles at activation. ID4 and ID5 models only. Volkswagen Finance.
Do you hear that? It might sound like nothing to you, but it's actually the sound of nuclear, wind and solar energy. At EDF, we're busy generating more British zero-carbon electricity than anyone to help keep future energy costs down for everyone and help cut UK carbon emissions to nothing.
Turn left.
Sound good to you? Find out more about our zero-carbon generation at edfenergy.com/helpingbritain.
This is LBC. Message Andrew Marr on WhatsApp now on 0345 6060 973.
6:20. We've heard a moment ago a view from the right of the Conservative Party. Let's turn now to one of the most controversial parts of this. I was discussing just now the decision not to exclude Afghan veterans who once worked alongside British forces there and have made their way here since. Now, one of those backing this now rejected Labour amendment from the Lords on this is the former National Security Advisor and Chair of the Joint Intelligence Committee, Lord Peter Ricketts, who's here in the studio to discuss his view. Lord Ricketts, lovely to see you there. Now, you are there's a lot of very eminent military people, Foreign Office people, and indeed yourself, who are backing an amendment, I think originally from Lord Des Brown, about the condition of the Afghan veterans. Why is this for you such an important issue?
I used to go to Afghanistan when I was National Security Advisor. I saw those interpretive people helping the British forces in many ways. They were taking a risk because the whole community knew that they were supporting the British. And when the British forces left, they stayed at home. It's their home. So they are at risk, and we have a moral obligation to make sure they come to their home.
And some have lost members of their families and so on.
Yes, they have. And the government will say that 16,000 have been brought home under the Afghan relocation program, but there's still 2,000 applications to consider people in Afghanistan at risk. And the British forces are going to reconsider another 2,000 Afghan special forces because they're not going to the government. So these are people at risk of their lives and their families as well.
Daniel Kruger said that the government had given some kind of commitment not to do this now. You've had a kind of verbal assurance that they're going to try not to send Afghan veterans to Kigali, but you haven't had anything you regard as legally binding or secure enough, I guess.
No, I think people want to hear it in the dispatch box in the House of Lords, and they're accepting Des Brown's amendment, which is a perfectly straightforward amendment. If we've accepted that these people should come under the resettlement program, why not specify in the law that anyone who put their life on the line by serving the British forces, supporting our causes, will not be sent to under this scheme?
Kind of a matter of national honour.
It is. It's a matter of national honour. It's also a practical point, because if we want local people to serve with our forces again in future military occasions, conflicts, we need them to be sure that if things come to it, we will see them all right. We won't leave them to face the consequences of having worked with us.
And we do this now, presumably in future, other groups of people around the world may look at us and think you're not completely trustworthy, you lot.
But that's the trouble. If we go and find ourselves in military operations looking for support, loyalty, trust from other local forces and their families, and we haven't come through for them on this, as most other Western countries have, then they're going to say, well, is it worth us taking the risk of standing with the Brits?
Let me ask you for your view about what is likely to happen. I'm asking you to guess a little bit about what's going to happen this evening, because Baroness Kennedy, who is sitting there, she tells me that the Labour group of peers will eventually, as it were, pull stumps, because they've been told to by the leader, Keir Starmer. She won't. She says, I'm a lawyer first, and I'm not going to pull stumps, she said. But people like yourself, as it were, the crossbenchers, are going to fight to the end.
We think this is a good principle, and I'm saying.
Caution, please mind the speed limit. Caution, please mind the speed limit. Caution, please mind the speed limit. Stay left.
Thank you so much for coming in. Now, finally, and let's not be naive about this, it's all politics in the end, and Rishi Sunak's hopes for turning around his dire polling position situation before a general election later on this year. So how does the British public, so far as we know now, regard this scheme? Professor Sir John Curtis, polling expert, of course, and politics professor at the University of Strathclyde, and I'm hoping he can help me here. John, very, very good to see you. There has been quite a lot of polling specifically on the Rwanda scheme. What are the headlines from that, would you say?
Well, I think there are probably three headlines. One is that most polling finds rather more people in favour than against, though it does depend a bit on how you word the question. The second thing to say, however, is that it's something that very clearly divides Conservative voters from Labour supporters. Conservative voters are keen on the idea for the most part. Labour voters tend not to like the idea, which is perhaps one of the reasons why Labour are willing to back it. The third is that the public are sceptical about whether or not it will actually work. So even though they might in principle think it's a good idea, some of them are not necessarily sure it's going to happen. So to that extent at least, we've heard politicians on both sides of the argument claiming the public think this and think that. The truth is it's an issue on which the public are reasonably evenly divided in many respects.
And presumably there's no way of knowing at all as to whether the public in the end would give Rishi Sunak, as it were, the credit for trying, even if the whole thing failed.
Well, all we can really do, Andrew, is to look at what are the things that are associated with the decline in Conservative support in this Parliament. In other words, is it the case that those people who think that immigration, whether legal or illegal, has been going up a lot, and who voted Conservative in 2019, are they more or less likely than other 2019 Conservative voters to be willing to say they vote Conservative?
Please mind the speaker.
Done this with all sorts of data sets and some you find there isn't much difference. In other words, it's not clear that immigration, though it's an issue that does indeed upset many 2019 Conservative voters, it seems to be that
please mind the speaker.
Issue. In other words, if you are concerned about how the current government is supporting level immigration, you might still be waiting to vote for them.
But almost nobody has met
the economy, then you really are.
Caution. Please mind the speaker.
The other point, of course, is that actually since the Conservatives have been focusing on this issue back in November of last year, that has been the period during which, for the most part, the reform was taking over. In the sense of advertising what so many voters regard as a political policy failure, it's not necessarily the best way of getting them back, unless, of course, all of a sudden they can turn it into a policy success.
John, you've made it very clear that, in your view, the game is pretty much off for the Conservatives at this point in the cycle. Now, do I take it from that even if this worked for them, it's not big enough to turn things around properly? In other words, the economy, NHS are still so much more overwhelmingly more important than Rwanda.
Well, indeed, and what you can also do, what I've done, is to say, well, let's just assume that there's the biggest turnaround in the polls 8 months after the election, which is of the order of around 6 points now in the lead. Let's also assume the polls are as wrong as they were in 1992. You still end up with Labour 5 or 6 points ahead. And here we have to remember one other crucial thing. The Conservatives are short friends in the House of Commons. A Labour minority administration can look to anticipate that the Liberal Democrats in the SNP would not in the immediate term at least bring them down. The Conservative Party cannot assume the same. In other words, the Liberal Democrats in the SNP will vote down a Conservative King's Speech. They will not vote down a Labour one. And that in the end is absolutely potentially crucial to the party's prospects.
So, John, if we try and put ourselves, as it were, in the mind of Rishi Sunak, it may be that what he is trying to do is not win an election here, but moderate the scale of the defeat, and thinking particularly of Reform UK versus Conservative switchers, people he might bring back in and stop that becoming an overwhelming, crushing defeat.
Well, yes, insofar as there's an electoral calculation behind this, I think that's right. I think, however, I'd also give him the credit of believing that he's doing what he thinks is right. Now, a lot of people don't necessarily think that what he's doing is right, but I think he clearly takes the view that coming across the channel and so-called jumping the queue is not acceptable. So and this is something on which under Rishi Sunak is an attempt is to return to traditional conservative tunes of a smaller state, lower taxes, lower immigration. The problem is, of course, is that in focusing all of that, they're fighting against their own record doing this Parliament, and that is very, very difficult to do.
Well, Sir John, we try and get the people who really know stuff on this show, and we've done it again tonight. Thank you so much. Now, coming up, yet more pain for the SNP as it looks like the scrapping of a climate pledge could lead to a collapse in their coalition government deal with the Scottish Greens. We'll be speaking to the co-leader of the Scottish Green Party next. But first, it's 6:30, and here's your news headlines with Tim Humphrey.
MPs have again voted on the Rwanda asylum bill hours after Rishi Sunak said he wanted to see planes taking off in 10 to 12 weeks. The two rules amendments have been rejected and will now go back to peers. Donald Trump's historic hush money trial has begun. Prosecutors claim the former US president orchestrated a criminal scheme to boost his chances in the 2016 presidential election. He denies covering up payments made to bury stories about an alleged affair, saying it's a sad, sad day for America. Hugh Edwards has resigned from the BBC after 40 years. The corporation says the broadcaster's decision followed medical advice. LBC weather, light rain continuing in central and eastern England tonight, dry elsewhere, cold in the north with a low of 1 degree.
LBC this morning on Nick Ferrari at breakfast. The Prime Minister said to be appalled by the Met Police treatment of a Jewish man who was threatened to arrest at a pro-Palestinian rally. Sir John Windsor served as Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Constabulary.
As far as I've been able to see, the officer in question dealt with Mr. Falter with commendable courtesy and consideration.
The officer using the words, "You are obviously openly Jewish." No one should be addressed like that, should they?
Perhaps he might have said, "It is plain that you are Jewish, and therefore if you get too close to these people or indeed go into the crowd, wade into the crowd, there is going to be disorder because you are going to be a target."
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
If loose and missing teeth or dentures affect the foods you can eat and make you feel embarrassed about your smile, speak to us at TDC about how we restore full sets of teeth so you get your smile and your confidence back. To learn more and book your consultation, visit smileinaday.co.uk. We're now part of Bupa.
Uno is now available at McDonald's Happy Meal. So let's see the jump Uno first.
Bring it on.
Yes. No! A wild card. Right. Yes. Back in the game. Yes. Oh, no! I draw one card.
Uno. Better luck next time.
Have fun with your Uno cards. Does that work out?
Nope.
Some fun, some food. It's all inside this Happy Meal. Until 7th of May from 11 a.m. Includes one pre-selected book or toy. Uno range comprises toys only while stocks last.
School reunion. What am I doing? Getting these people together.
Stay right.
All these years. The last time we shared a room, there was
then turn right.
and Oscars involved.
We can't help the uncertainty around getting old friends together. But when it comes to bringing your old pensions together, we can help. Transfer all your old pensions into one place. To combine, go to standardlife.co.uk.
Turn right.
Transferring pensions won't be right for everyone. Money invested is at risk. Provided by Phoenix Life Limited Trading and Standard Life. For full details, visit standardlife.co.uk.
Do you hear that? It might sound like nothing to you, but it's actually the sound of nuclear, wind and solar energy. At EDF, we're busy generating more British zero-carbon electricity than anyone to help keep future energy costs down for everyone and help cut UK carbon emissions to nothing. Sound good to you? Find out more about our zero-carbon generation at edfenergy.com/helping Britain.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
6:33. I was asking for texts about the Rwanda bill, and some are coming in already.
Right.
Mark in Cheltenham says, if they get the planes in the air with these illegal people who will, in my opinion, contribute nothing to the UK, I, for one, will vote Conservative and not Reform. Alice in Norwich, however, says this bill will go down in history as one of, if not the, oddest and most pointless outrages from this utterly abysmal government. Alice, tell us what you really think. And Daniel from Nottingham says, first time texting in, he says, apart from the Rwanda bill, no one else seems to have a plan. We need to try something to deter illegal people entering the country. Let's try this and see what happens. So by no means everybody listening is against the Rwanda scheme. But meanwhile, to another piece of parliamentary news today, a researcher in the House of Commons and another man have been charged with spying for China. Allegations that counter-terrorism police say are very serious. Our reporter, Charlotte Lynch, has been following this story. Now, Charlotte, I know there's not an awful lot we can say legally, but tell us what you can.
Yes, well, we do know that some senior Conservatives are being drawn into this because one of those men arrested, Christopher Cash, who is 29 and has now been charged, worked as a parliamentary researcher and was closely linked to senior Tories, including Tom Tugendhat, who is now Security Minister, and Alicia Kearns, who, of course, serves as chair of the Commons.
Both of them China hawks, interestingly, not particular friends of the Chinese Communist Party.
Absolutely, and we know that the 29-year-old was previously a director of the China Research Group, which was initially chaired by Mr. Tugendhat, then Ms. Kearns, and it had a sceptical view of the UK's relationship with Beijing. Now, he's been charged alongside another man, 32-year-old Christopher Berry, with providing prejudicial information to a foreign state. That's been named as China, and we know that they are due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court this Friday. Now, they were first arrested in March last year, so police have described this as a very long, complex investigation, but they've said the allegations are extremely serious, and the charge alleges that Cash, between the 20th of January 2022 and the 3rd of February 2023, obtained, collected, recorded, published or communicated information which were calculated to be, might be, or intended, directly or indirectly, to be useful to an enemy. His co-accused, that's 32-year-old Christopher Berry, is suspected of carrying out the same offence between the 28th of December 2020-2021 and the 3rd of February 2023. Now, we have heard from a spokesman for the Chinese embassy in London, and it said that this is completely fabricated and nothing but malicious slander. It said, we firmly oppose this and urge the UK to stop anti-China political manipulation and stop putting on such a self-staged political farce.
Gosh, does sound very serious business indeed, Charlotte. Thank you so much for that. And now to an entirely different story, because things are suddenly going quite quickly wrong for the Scottish National Party in Scotland, led by the First Minister, of course, Humza Yousaf. After the SNP had to abandon an important net zero target and then confront the halt of puberty blockers in the country's only gender healthcare clinic following the publication of the Cass report, relations with its coalition partner, the Scottish Greens, who are strongly enthusiastic about trans rights, have seriously deteriorated. The alliance, if it breaks down now, does not necessarily mean the collapse of the SNP government, but Mr Yousaf also faces the embarrassment of the rearrest of Peter Murrell, the SNP's former CEO and, of course, husband of Nicola Sturgeon, the former First Minister. And she thought the Tories were having a difficult time at Westminster. Well, Lorna Slater is co-leader of the Scottish Green Party, and she's with me now. Lorna, very good to see you there. How close are the Greens from ending what was called the Butte House Agreement, the alliance you made with the SNP?
Well, I wouldn't want to get ahead of the situation.
Caution.
The Butte
Please
House
mind the
Agreement
speed
has been a great success. It is something unique. I think in the UK, certainly in Scotland, two parties with very different policies on many issues agreeing to work together. It's so different from the kind
Caution.
of antagonistic,
Please mind the speed limit.
shouty politics that you see so often, where parties shout across the chamber at one another and don't actually get much done together. We've agreed to work together, particularly in areas where we do have common interests, and that includes tackling child poverty, tackling the climate crisis, and of course we both are in favour
At the
of
roundabout,
Scottish independence.
take the second
So the Butte House
exit.
Agreement has been a great success. Now, this last week has been a big challenge for us. Obviously, the 2030 climate targets are a hugely important issue, and our members are very frustrated and angry and frightened that Scotland is not able to meet those 2030 targets. So the question we've got to have a conversation about...
I'm sorry to jump in. I've been reading a lot of letters and communications from your members in Scotland, and they are livid about this. And they're very, very upset about what the Scottish Government's position is on trans rights after the Cass report as well. And there does seem to be a growing swell of opinion inside the Scottish Green Party that you should end this agreement.
So the Scottish Government has yet to set out its response to the Cass review.
Arrive
is
at your
very
destination.
Strongly pro-trans rights as
your
well.
Route guidance
brought,
is
for
now
example,
finished.
the bill on the gender recognition reform in Scotland, which was brought by the government and was widely supported across the Parliament. So we are a government that supports trans rights, absolutely. In terms of our members, we are a grassroots member-led party.
Exactly.
So it is right that our members have asked for and will get a robust debate on this within the party. So the parties will be calling a general meeting of the party to have this debate, to decide if we want to continue forward in the Bute House, if this is the best way to continue to deliver for climate and for people. Now, I believe that it is the best way. We have done an awful lot in government, from banning new incinerators to putting millions and millions of pounds into nature restoration, upgrading recycling in Scotland, and we have a lot more to come. My colleague Patrick Harvey will be bringing a bill on tenants' rights and rent controls in Scotland. I'll be bringing bills on the circular economy and the natural environment. All of these things are taking us toward a net zero future and nature restoration and improving quality of life for people in Scotland.
So you would like to carry on with this, but to be absolutely clear to people listening who don't perhaps understand the numbers and so on in the Scottish Parliament, even if you pulled out of the Bute House agreement with your 7 MSPs, that would not mean that the SNP government would necessarily fall, not unless you united with the Tories and with the Labour, which seems, can I put it, rather unlikely. So they could carry on as the largest party. So we're not looking at a sort of existential moment for the Scottish government, whatever happens.
It is up for the Scottish Green members to decide whether they feel we are most influential as part of government in continuing the cooperation agreement, or whether they would prefer us to be in opposition. So that's the discussion for our members. As I've said, I think we're more influential in government.
Sorry, Lorna. When does that happen? When does that discussion take place, and how?
It will take place in the next month. Our members need to be officially notified, so the date for that meeting and the notification has not yet been sent out to members. Most of the work of our party is done by volunteers, so of course these are very dedicated people who have day jobs and families and so on, so they'll be working to get that notice out to members in the next week, I would expect. And so yes, we would expect that date to be within the next month. And in between then, we will have more than one discussion about this. I will be going around to branches who've invited me to come and have the conversation. My fellow MSPs will be doing the same. We'll have other meetings of the party. It's really important that we dig into this and understand how we move from things like setting ambitious targets to actually taking ambitious action in Scotland on climate.
All right, Lorna Slater, thank you very much for talking to LBC tonight. 46,000 civilian aircraft have reported incidents of GPS interference over the Baltics due to Russian electronic jamming systems. You may remember back in March the reports of the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps being affected by electronic jamming. But how worried should you be if your plane passes through that area as you head off for a holiday this summer? Perhaps the retired RAF Air Vice Marshal, fighter pilot and co-host of the Red Matrix podcast, Sean Bell, might be able to help us answer that. Sean, very good to see you there. So this sounds very, very worrying. The Russians are clearly jamming a lot of planes passing anywhere near Kaliningrad, that enclave they have on the Baltic coast. And that's been going on, I think, for a long time. And this will feel very, very worrying to an awful lot of people as they contemplate their holiday plans.
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening, Andrew. I should reassure. I think whilst in our motor cars we rely a lot on GPS, if that goes down, you don't have a navigation system. Airlines have have their own inertial navigation system. In effect, lots of gyros spinning around in a box that independently navigate your way around the world, and it's got several different backup modes. It can also log on to various navigation beacons around the world. It also uses GPS, but GPS is traditionally a little unreliable at times, particularly if there are operations going on. So it isn't the sole way that airlines track their navigation system. And I've got several colleagues who I used to fly jets in the military. Several of them have moved on to fly airlines. This is nothing new, and I can reassure that it's a bit unsettling for the pilots because they have to keep an eye on it, but it shouldn't worry any of the passengers at all.
Why are the Russians doing it, do you think?
Well, the problem is with the GPS jamming is it's not very targeted. It tends to be a sort of generic. Once you switch it on, it jams everything in the local area. Now, one of the things that Russia is acutely aware of with its war in Ukraine, it knows that the Western allies are patrolling the international skies around Ukraine, but they're using their sensors to look in across the border. The eyes and the ears of NATO are watching what's going on, and I have no doubt that they're also passing Ukraine valuable information. Now, that will really hack the Russians off. That's why the Russians knocked out an MQ-9 Reaper out of the skies in international airspace. They also tried to shoot a missile at an RAF surveillance aircraft that was operating in international airspace, and they are well aware that the West is doing quite a lot to help Ukraine, even though it's doing it completely legitimately in international airspace. So things like jamming are just their way of trying to upset the apple cart for NATO.
Well, it's great to have a senior ex-RAF man on the show, because I also want to ask you about this huge new American aid project for Ukraine. I was talking on the show last week about my anxiety that the Russians were now winning on the front line and that the Ukrainian frontline defences could perhaps collapse at some point this year. Is this change of heart, as it were, in Washington going to be enough and quick enough to change things on the battlefield, in your view?
Well, Andrew, I share your concern. I think for the last few months, the shortage of weapons, it has meant that Russia has momentum on the front line. It's taken out Avdiivka, and there's a town called Chasiv Yar, which we suspect will be the next to fall. I think 60 billion of aid is huge. It's a significant sum. The trouble is it's cash. And what Ukraine desperately needs is weapons, and they need them now. There'll be 3 packages of weapons, I suspect. It'll be defence weapons, Patriot systems, stuff like that, artillery shells and bullets to help the front line, and also some longer-range missiles like ATACMS and HIMARS. But bluntly, what Ukraine needs is a steady supply of weapons, not this feast and famine. And the West needs to step up its defence industrial base. There are vast quantities of weapons that get used in warfare. Russia is doing that. It's got 3 times the level of defence industrial base it had at the start of the conflict, and it's got its oil revenues buying weapons from North Korea and Iran. Unless the West finds a way of stepping up the ability to generate those weapons, you can't just buy them at supermarkets. They have to be made, and unless we've industrialised that, the prospects for Ukraine in the medium to long term look particularly bleak.
So it's a race, as it were, to get these weapons there in time, and a race you fear we may be in the West losing.
Russia, particularly President Putin, has always played the long game here. He always judged that actually Western appetite for this war would wane, that we'd run out of weapons, run out of motivation, and he was playing the long game. Ultimately, there is the opportunity. The West is by far the bigger defence industrial base capacity, and if we were to put boots on the ground, if we were to put a no-fly zone in place, bluntly, it would stop Russia in a heartbeat. The trouble is, at the moment, you've got President Putin and Lavrov threatening nuclear Armageddon should that happen, and so far that rhetoric has stopped the West actually intervening. But bluntly, it would not be difficult to stop Russia if we had the political intent to do it.
There's a very sober thought to end on. Sean, thank you so much for talking to me tonight. Really interesting. Now, coming up, Thames Water have prompted new headlines today with a suggested plan to tackle sewage dumping, which means much higher bills for consumers. And the star power from Taylor Swift seems to have many unexpected consequences, this time for a small pub in South London. More on that next. The time now, 6:47.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
Are you now resigned to flights taking off to Rwanda in June or July? Or do you hope the courts will scupper them again?
Ian Dale on LBC.
Jump into a Škoda Plus approved used car with 11.4% APR representative plus £750 deposit contribution on Solutions PCP. 2 years servicing, 2 years warranty, 2 MOTs, and 2 years roadside assistance to use when driving to places like your 2-year-old's tutu party in Tooting tomorrow. Skoda Approved Use event available from the 15th to the 29th of April, so visit your local retailer today. Skoda. Indemnities may be required at participating retailers. Vehicles up to 8 years and 100,000 miles at activation. Skoda Finance. Toodaloo.
Not shopped at Ocado, but you've heard it's the best. Now you can shop for 25% less, and groceries delivered free to your address. There's an Ocado just for you.
First time customer, get 25% off your grocery shop and free delivery.
There's an Ocado just for you.
New customers only. Minimum spend £60. Max saving £20. Geographical restrictions apply. Conditions at Ocado.com. Verify at info@OcadoRetail.com.
The McDonald's breakfast deal. Succulent sausage, an egg McMuffin and a latte, all for just $2.79. Something that will make anyone a morning person. So morningy that even the birds are more morningy. McDonald's. Until 11 a.m. Not available on delivery. Exclusions apply. Price and participation may vary.
Club Lloyds from Lloyds Bank gives you preferential rates of up to 6.25% AER interest on your savings, which is very interesting because whether you're setting money aside for holidays, rainy days, special days, or far off in the future days, this account really does have something for everyone. If that's got your interest, search Club Lloyds, the inclusive bank account with exclusive benefits. £3 monthly fee may apply. Account opening subject to status. UK residents 18+. Rate depends on account.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC Tonight with Andrew Marr.
6:50. Taylor Swift is an American singer and she's apparently, I'm told, quite popular. She sings about former lovers and disappointing boyfriends, including the British actor Joe Alwyn. And in her new album, if they're still called albums, I don't know, the Tortured Poets Society, she refers to somebody who may be him going into a pub called The Black Dog, which may be in Vauxhall, South London, and appears to actually exist. Anyway, huge numbers of her fans are turning up there as well. Let's go into the Black Dog right now and hear some voices from it.
Hi, welcome to the Black Dog Vauxhall.
So I watched as you walk into some bar called the Black Dog.
Got our Swift burger on, Taylor's version of course. We've got all of our cocktails are now Taylor's version as well. We've also got a Swift half pint available for you. And if you quote a lyric to a Taylor Swift song, you can have that for free.
I'm Kelsey. I'm from Portland, Oregon, in the States. I have been listening to her new album, The Tortured Poets Department, and she has a song called The Black Dog. And I have had this trip booked for a while, so I made it a point to stop here because I had a free afternoon.
My name's Catherine Johnson, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I got the Swiftie burger. I'm actually visiting, and when the album came out, I was like, well, we have to go. It's my last day here today. Like, I remember, like, sitting in my bedroom with the debut album out and, like, dancing to it and stuff. So that was probably 9, or I guess, when was that, 2006? I was 5. It's like, it's cute.
We were also, like, trying. I was like, who would be around Vauxhall right now? Like, what, Maddie or Joe? Like, I cannot see either of them around this spot. So then we were, like, trying to do our detective skills of, like...
It's very private.
Yeah.
And, like, off the beaten path.
Amanda from Chicago. I'm a Taylor Swift fan, and since we were so close, we figured we should take the opportunity and come in. I think she just comes off as relatable. So it's someone that you can see yourself in. Like, it's just your regular pub, and she was probably just here on a regular day enjoying her time with Joe.
You won't miss me in the Black Dog when someone is the starting.
From the Black Dog. And now to Lily Bottomley, who is social media and events manager at the Black Dog. Lily, we heard quite a bit from you at the start of that report there. Just how busy, how rammed have you been in the last few days?
It's been high. It's been pretty incredible, to be honest with you. I mean, we've never really experienced anything like it before. The weekend was absolutely madness, and we're already nearly booked out for her tour dates, which is coming due to this, which is amazing. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. It's been crazy.
And do you remember Joe Alwyn sneaking in, forward witless, with his girlfriend at the time, Lily Bottomley, singing a few lines?
I can either confirm or deny, but I do have a certain blonde regular.
A certain blonde regular. regular. Okay, very, very good. And I love your notion of a swift half. It's very good indeed. But I was also listening to those very gentle, very lovable young American voices and wonder whether you're going to properly introduce them to pork scratchings and bitter.
I think it's due. I'll open up their minds a little bit, show them.
I think you really do, yeah. So, I mean, you've suddenly become a very, very famous venue overnight. Tell me a little bit about the Black Dog. Have you been in the area for a very long time? What kind of pub are you? Are you a proper pub with proper beer?
We are a proper pub with proper beer.
Oh, good.
We consider ourselves a neighbourhood pub. We're just off of Pleasure Gardens in Vauxhall. It's a bit of an institution, to be honest. It's been here for a long time. And seeing the way that the clientele has shifted in the past couple of days has been pretty incredible, to be honest. But it's a really lovely mix. The atmosphere is a real jovial one. It's really positive. And you know, you can't expect or plan or buy this kind of exposure. So we are leaning into it, but don't want to lose our identity as well. So we're finding a balance.
Now, I don't know whether or not you're a live music venue. Would you allow Taylor Swift to come and do a few songs if she wanted to, or would you keep her out?
That's not even a question. Absolutely.
Well, I just put it out there. I put it out there in the ether. Okay.
You speak it into existence.
Lily Bottomley, thank you very much indeed for talking to me tonight, and congratulations. Enjoy the evening. Now then, good old Thames Water, almost as reliable a source of stories as it has been of sewage. It now wants to raise bills for its 16 million customers by up to 44% over the next 5 years, which would rise those bills to an average of more than 600 quid per household. It's promising to spend more than £1 billion on trying to improve its environmental performance. Not very difficult, I'd say. The business itself is struggling to stay afloat, heavily burdened by debt, but is still paying out its dividends to its shareholders. I think it's safe to say it's not the most popular private company in the southeast of England. Jill Plimmer has been covering this story for the Financial Times. Jill, I hope you can hear me. Good to talk to you. Can I ask you whether you think Ofwat, which is the regulator, is going to allow them to put in this pretty huge increase?
I think it probably will. It probably doesn't have much choice, in fact. I mean, Thames, as you say, has a massive black hole in its finances. Even if it increases bills by that much, it'll still need additional debt and additional cash from shareholders. So really, Ofwat probably doesn't have much choice.
Now, I was being very rude about Thames Water just now, but let me try and look at the other side. They have presumably been in charge of a very, very old and in many cases antiquated system of pipes and sewers, which does need to be replaced.
That's absolutely right. But I guess the question is why they haven't managed to keep on top of it and improve things over the past 34 years since it was privatised.
Let me look at the question of privatisation, because, you know, you work for the Pink Un. It's the primary financial newspaper of the UK, and you're in favour of the markets, therefore, and all the rest of it. But it seems to a lot of people that if there is one natural monopoly, so blatantly, obviously, something that the state or the public realm should own rather than be making profit from, it's water. I mean, particularly in this country.
Yes, I mean, I think the UK is very unusual in having privatised its water system in England and Wales. I think it's the only country in the world that's done it this particular way, handing over all the infrastructure to private companies. So it's certainly a fair question to ask. And I guess we need to consider, has this privatised system actually delivered to customers? Has it delivered a better service than if it was in the state hands?
Well, that is the absolutely crucial question. Do we know at all what kind of improvements they want to devote this extra £1.1 billion to?
Well, they've been very unspecific about exactly which projects they would deliver, but one can safely assume that they need to cut sewage outflows into rivers, and then they also need to cut leaks, because leakage is at 24% of treated water, so they need to improve that. That's not much better than it was nearly 30 years ago. And they have a number of other problems they have to address.
I'm sure they do. Now, you know, for all of us who have no option but to use Thames Water because it is a monopoly, there's no alternative. We've been observing the prices going up and up and up. But what about the shareholders? Are they getting a good deal? I mean, are they making a good cut out of this?
Well, they certainly don't feel they have, and, to be fair, there's a new set of shareholders that more or less came in 2017 when the Macquarie, the former sort of majority owner, left, and they claim not to have had any external dividends since 2017, but they have received a lot of money all the same.
Well, bad news there for an awful lot of people who are going to be paying high bills. Jill, thank you so much for talking to me tonight. Now, I started the show talking about the Rwanda bill and asking for WhatsApps and emails and the rest of it. Here's just a couple of final ones. Chris via WhatsApp. I, for one, am glad Rishi Sunak has invested £500 million in a housing scheme. It's just a shame it's Rwanda and not the UK. And Roger in Brentwood writes, how the hell can we send asylum seekers to a country whose nationals have been granted asylum in the UK? Madness. Now then, if you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on LBC's official app, Global Player, where you can also pause and rewind live radio. Download now for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kendish, but right now it's time for Ian Dale.
Thanks, Andrew. As I speak, there's a game of parliamentary ping-pong going on between the House of Commons and the House of Lords over the Rwanda bill. The Prime Ministerial patience is close to snapping. But Prime Ministers in this country are not dictators. They can only govern with the will of Parliament. But assuming this game does reach a conclusion, are you now resigned to flights taking off to Kigali in June or July? Or do you hope maybe, the courts will scupper them again? Indeed, can they? On Cross-Questioner 8, Tory peer Stuart Jackson, Lib Dem MP Munira Wilson, Guardian columnist Zoe Williams, and the author of social policy columnist Dr. Rakib Ehsan. And at 9, what is patriotism, and why do some people have such a problem with the word?
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, MPs have rejected the two latest Lords amendments to the Rwanda asylum bill, hours after Rishi Sunak said he wanted planes taking off in 10 to 12 weeks. The matter now returns to Peers, with the Prime Minister saying Parliament will sit late into the night to get the legislation approved. Danny Kruger, the Conservative MP for Devizes, who is co-founder of the New Conservatives, told Tonight with Andrew Marr he hopes the bill will pass at some point tonight.
Fundamentally, in order to get the humane, fair refugee system that everybody agrees we need, we have to stop people entering illegally and jumping the queue. And the only way to do that is to deter them. And if we can't stop them physically in the channel, for reasons we all understand, then we have to remove them once they arrive.
A former parliamentary researcher is among two men charged with spying for China. They're accused under the Official Secrets Act of passing information to an enemy state. The first day of Donald Trump's historic hush money trial has ended after prosecutors claimed he orchestrated a criminal scheme to boost his chances in the 2016 election. The former president denies covering payments made to bury stories about an alleged affair with the actress Stormy Daniels. Speaking outside court, Mr. Trump said the trial was unfair and he should be allowed to campaign. A 39-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of drug driving after a Mercedes ploughed through a classroom wall in Liverpool. No children were at the Beacon Primary School in Everton at the time of this morning's crash. Scottish Greens are to vote on whether to continue their power-sharing agreement with the SNP. The party is unhappy at the watering down of climate change targets announced last week. If they vote to end what's known as the Bute House Agreement, the SNP would have to continue as a minority government. Lorna Slater, the co-chair of the Scottish Green Party, told Tonight with Andrew Marr the arrangement has worked well up to now, but the last week has been a challenge.
Obviously, the 2030 climate targets are a hugely important issue, and our members are very frustrated, angry and frightened that Scotland is not able to meet those 2030 targets.
The Conservative candidate in the London mayoral election has promised to cancel the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone in the capital. Susan Hall has published her manifesto. Labour says there's a £500 million shortfall in her spending plans. Tom Swarbrick will be hosting a mayoral debate on LBC tomorrow, with the Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem and Green candidates all taking part. The full list is at lbc.co.uk/candidates. The FTSE 100 has reached a new record high. The index, consisting of the UK's largest 100 companies by market value is up 1.6%. It's been boosted by a strong showing for retail companies, with Sainsbury's, Marks & Spencer, Tesco and Ocado among the biggest rises of the day. Staff at a London pub mentioned on Taylor Swift's new album say the international attention has been a whirlwind. Fans from around the world have been rushing to the Black Dog in Vauxhall, with some buying customised pint glasses as souvenirs. Lily Bottomley, social media and events manager at the Black Dog, told Andrew the reaction has been incredible.
It's been high. It's been pretty incredible, to be honest with you. I mean, we've never really experienced anything like it before. The weekend was absolute madness, and we're already nearly booked out for her tour dates, which is coming in June and August, which is amazing. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. It's been crazy.
In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 128 points at that new high of 80.24. Now minus $1.23 and €1.16.
LBC weather.
With Ripple Energy, part owner wind farm for low-cost electricity.
Turn light rain continuing in central and eastern England tonight. Dry elsewhere. Cold in the north with a low of 1 degree. Staying cloudy in the southeast tomorrow. Largely dry elsewhere with increasing sunny spells and a high of 14 degrees. From
Stay left,
LBC,
then turn left.
I'm Tim Humphrey.